Assalamualaikum everyone. Welcome to another Quran study. Today we are going to read from Surah 42, verse 15. Message to the Christians and the Jews. This is what you shall preach and steadfastly maintain what you are commanded to do, and do not follow their wishes, and proclaim, I believe in all the scriptures sent down by God. I was commanded to judge among you equitably. God is our Lord and your Lord. We have our deeds and you have your deeds. There is no argument between us and you. God will gather us all together. To him is the ultimate destiny. So, in this verse, God says, This is what you shall preach. This is what you shall preach. So, it's a very important statement because this phrase actually directly explains to us that the only source is the Quran. And in the rest of the verse, God mentions believing in all the scriptures. I mean, the Quran confirms all the scriptures, and replaces them. So this means that our ultimate reference is the Quran. So this also shows that the other books were also sent down by God, and therefore we should have faith that the other books also came from God, because when we examine those books carefully, we see the same message of worshiping only one God. But since the Quran replaces them, our ultimate reference should be the Quran and only the Quran. 16. Those who argue about God after receiving his message, their argument is nullified at their Lord. They have incurred condemnation and have deserved a severe retribution. God is the one who sent down this scripture to deliver the truth and the law. For all that you know, the hour, day of judgment, may be very close. Some Christians and Jews have many assumptions and arguments about the Quran. For example, they give various arguments for the Quran, like it's a fabrication or it is copied from the Bible, etc. And but we know that all these arguments and other arguments they present are actually refuted in the Quran. Like the mathematical miracle itself proves that the Quran is not a human-made book. It also proves that the Quran is not a fabrication, and it is not a book that was copied from other scriptures. But despite this, people still come up with many arguments about mathematical miracle or the Quran. This is because disbelievers are the real enemies of God. So they are competing with each other to go to hell. So they come up with various ideas and such excuses. And so they insist on going to hell willingly, actually. That's why we can say that if someone is going to hell, it is because they deserve it. Only real enemies of God go to hell. If someone is not an enemy of God, he or she is not going to hell. 18. The believers mindful of the day of judgment. Challenging it are those who do not believe in it. As for those who believe, they are concerned about it, and they know that it is the truth. Absolutely, those who deny the hour have gone far astray. God is fully aware of all his creatures. He provides for whomever he wills. He is the powerful, the Almighty. Whoever seeks the rewards of the hereafter, we multiply the rewards for him. And whoever seeks the materials of this world, we give him therefrom. Then he receives no share in the hereafter. And as you know, believing in God and the hereafter and doing righteous works are the three minimum requirements for going to paradise. So, true believers are aware of the day of resurrection because they know that if they don't do righteous works, there is an eternal hell waiting for them. So, believers are righteous people because they have certainty about the hereafter as well as about other things. And you know, believing in the hereafter is not just something that's said with the mouth. It is something that should be demonstrated by behavior. You know, millions of people say that they believe in the hereafter, but they don't act like that. So their behavior exposes them. Uh, you know, the Quranic definition of belief in the hereafter is different from people's definition. So it's not enough to say that I believe in the hereafter. God actually looks at your behavior. For example, in Surah 39, verse 45, God says that when God alone is mentioned, the hearts of those who do not believe in the hereafter shrink with aversion. But when others are mentioned besides Him, they become satisfied. So when we look at this verse, we see that such people are exposed by their behavior. You know, uh, unless the belief that comes out of your mouth is supported by your behavior, you are heading towards hypocrisy. And even if a person says 1,000 times a day that he believes in the hereafter, if he adds the name of the Prophet to the Shahada, for example, he doesn't believe in the hereafter, as the Quran puts it. That person's statement about believing in the hereafter has no value in the sight of God. This is why God always says in the Quran that people and even many believers who say they believe in God do not actually believe in the hereafter. So, to avoid such hypocrisy, every morning when we get up, we should start the day by saying Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, La ilaha illallah. And this will be actually a sign that we are making God our God, you know. And we have to be careful about our actions because they must be consistent with the Quran. And we have to examine ourselves. When we see something beautiful, for example, do we say Subhanallah? Do we say MashaAllah when we see a blessing from God? Do we say Inshallah when we talk about something we are going to do in the future? Do we think about God most of the day? And do we say Bismillah before we eat? Do we eat and drink moderately? Do we dress nicely when we go to the masjid? When we do all these things and other commandments, we are actually showing that our behavior matches with what we say in terms of submission. Otherwise, words that are not reflected in behavior have no significance for God. We must prove that our belief in God and the hereafter are not just words but actions. '21. The idols, innovating new religious laws. They follow idols who decree for them religious laws never authorized by God. If it were not for the predetermined decision, they would have been judged immediately. Indeed, the transgressors have incurred a painful retribution. And the footnote says, The Islam of today's Muslim world has been so distorted, it has become a satanic cult. The ulama or religious scholars have added many extraneous laws, prohibitions, dress codes, dietary regulations, and religious practices never authorized by God. This is one of the main reasons for sending God's messenger of the covenant. 931, 33, 67, and Appendix 33. As you can see in the footnote, one of the reasons why the messenger of the covenant was sent is to expose unauthorized religious laws, prohibitions, and practices that were added by God's enemies. For example, traditional Muslims follow many dietary prohibitions right now, and they forbid to eat many sea animals and some other animals, for example. And they are like especially hostile to the pig itself. They forbid the fat of the pig and even the pig itself. But the truth is only the meat of pig is prohibited by God. We can see this in the Quran. So in this case, these kind of God's enemies are actually adding something that's not authorized by God to the religion. And or sometimes they abrogate some laws from it, and this is not limited to foods only. For example, they are adding to the La ilaha illallah, most basic commandment of the religion that has come from the time of Adam. So La ilaha illallah is a command that has been authorized by God through all the prophets and messengers, but they see no problem in breaking this first commandment of submission. So in the same way, the additions and abrogations to practices are actually practices of a religion that's not authorized. So this is why God repeatedly in the Quran commands us not to invent new things in religion. And it makes no difference whether 1 or 100 innovations are added to the religion. Even one innovation means you are falling in idol worship, as it shows that you are trying to be a ruler other than God. And it nullifies all the good work you have done. So we need to be constantly aware of this. And this is really a sign of ego, because these people actually consider themselves to be a god besides God. And they make up or abolish rules and regulations in the religion without authorization. But we know that people have to kill their ego, otherwise their ego will kill them, and consequently they will experience the second death mentioned in the Quran and go to hell. 23. You will see the transgressors worried about everything they had committed. Everything will come back and haunt them. As for those who believed and led a righteous life, they will be in the gardens of paradise. They will receive whatever they wish from their Lord. This is the great blessing. This is the good news from God to his servants who believe and lead a righteous life. Say, I do not ask you for any wage. I do ask each of you to take care of your own relatives. Anyone who does a righteous work, we multiply his reward for it. God is forgiver, appreciative. So, on the day of resurrection, the disbelievers come in a state of worry because of the crimes they committed. And in that day, these people will be presented with video recordings of their bad deeds. But they will try to deny it because of the terrible retribution. They will try to exit. And, even their skin will speak. And they will try to deny all the things they did. That's why there is such a miraculous system. So the system is based on exposing them and not doing them injustice. So those bad things they did will actually bring their end. But the righteous know that their good deeds will be rewarded, so they will be happy on the day of resurrection, and their rewards will be multiplied manifold. 24. God erases the falsehood and affirms the truth. Are they saying he, Rashad, has fabricated lies about God? If God willed, he could have sealed your mind. But God erases the falsehood and affirms the truth with his words. He is fully aware of the innermost thoughts. And there is a footnote here. The disbelievers added two false statements at the end of Surah 9 to commemorate their idol, the Prophet Muhammad. God has revealed overwhelming evidence to erase this blasphemy and establish the truth. By adding the geometrical value of Rashad Khalifa 1230 plus the verse number 24, we get 1254, which is 19 times 66. Please see appendices 2 and 24 for the details. These statements added at the end of Surah 9 were actually part of God's plan. We can see it as a test to expose those who do not really believe in the Quran and the messenger also. And there are people who failed this test, and there are people out there who accept the mathematical miracle but claim that there is no addition at the end of Surah 9. So these people are actually not accepting the whole Quran. They only believe in the Quran partially, as God said. And they also accept the miracle partially, which is against God's system. All this actually shows that there are certain tests at each step of submission. And these tests are put there by God to show our true belief, And these people fail at certain steps because of their ego or something else. I mean, first of all, they don't accept this verse, the verse 24, that is put in the Quran. So the Quran gives signs about the addition, like there is no Basmala in Surah 9. We don't see Basmala in Surah 9. And these are just basic facts, So when we examine the whole thing, it is clear that there is no argument about it. So they will have no excuses on the day of resurrection. They are not accepting what is part of the mathematical miracle, and they are actually following their own personal ideas. And besides that, I mentioned that there are people with many different views. So there are also those who accept everything and don't accept Rashad's messengership, for example. So these people actually fail the test of believing the messengership. So God's system is very perfectly designed. He only includes those whose belief is real and firm, and he simply exposes the others. 25. He is the one who accepts the repentance from his servants and remits the sins. He is fully aware of everything you do. Responding to him are those who believe and lead a righteous life. He will shower them with his blessings. As for the disbelievers, they have incurred a severe retribution. If God increased the provision for his servants, they would transgress on earth. This is why he sends it precisely measured to whomever he wills. He is fully cognizant and seer of his servants. He is the one who sends down the rain after they had despaired, and spreads his mercy. He is the only master, most praiseworthy. Among his proofs is the creation of the heavens and the earth. and the creatures spreads in them. He is able to summon them when he wills. So actually, God is doing everything. So he controls our provisions. So we shouldn't get angry and frustrated for something about provision, you know? Like money can be a big test for some people, and more or less money is actually a big test. And health, children, and others, all these can be a part of tests within the admission test, as you know. So the way to pass these tests is to respond to God, as you see in verse 26. Like if you don't miss your prayers, if you are careful enough to pay your zakat on time, or if you are dedicated to do all other commandments in the Quran, you are actually responding to God because God asks you to do something in favor of your soul, and you are trying to do it. So it is obligatory for our souls to follow all the commandments in this book. Only a consequence. 30. Anything bad that happens to you is a consequence of your own deeds, and He overlooks many of your sins. You know, this verse is basically talking about bad things that we experience. So, which is the educational disasters, you know, or getting a pinch. So, bad things happen when we step out of God's kingdom. And, you know, this world is a great blessing as a third chance for us. But because of the evil that it contains, it is a consequence of the sin that we did during the great feud, you know. So we had a chance not to go through these difficult tests in the world if we didn't take the responsibility. But by accepting this responsibility or this freedom of choice, we did a bad thing. And as a result of this, we took a great risk actually. So this bad consequence is actually because of our own action. But subhanallah, guidance has come from God. So we are trying to be with those who are extremely lucky on the day of resurrection. And inshallah, we will be one of them. May God continue to guide all of us. 31. You can never escape, and you have none besides God as a Lord and Master. Among his proofs are the ships that sail the sea with sails like flags. If he willed, he could have stilled the winds, leaving them motionless on top of the water. These are proofs for those who are steadfast, appreciative. You know, people don't control the ships. They don't keep those ships with tons of weight on the sea either. So God is doing all this. So if God had not allowed them, they couldn't even build these ships. So here we see the enormous power of God, you know. And even when we look at the nature itself, we see that all this cannot happen by chance on its own. And when we look at nature, we see that there is a system within itself. So there is a perfect order, like in space. And only God could have created this system. A creature has no power on its own. I mean, who can create a tree out of nothing in a laboratory, for example? But God can do it. He created the whole universe out of nothing. So when we think about the power of God, we can talk for like hours and more. And God is taking care of us as if we are the only ones on the earth, you know, for example. But there are more than 8 billion people right now. But He is taking care of us as if we are the only ones. And He knows what is going on in their minds, for example. He controls all their organs, their body, and their heart. So uh, that's why God describes Himself in the Quran as omnipotent and omniscient. Let's continue. 34. He can annihilate them as a consequence of their own works. Instead, He overlooks many of their sins. Those who argue against our proofs will find out that they have no basis. Whatever you are given is no more than temporary material of this life. What God possesses is far better and everlasting for those who believe and trust in their Lord. So we are basically witnesses to the truth and fulfillment of this verse 34. Because in the beginning, God could have destroyed those who were with Satan and give them the retribution for their sins. But He gave them many chances. He gave us many chances. And the following verse says that those who argue against our proofs will find out that they have no basis. So that means those who oppose the idea that there is and can be no God but one God will see on the day of resurrection that their claims are built on lies and falsehoods despite all the evidence. I mean, on the day of resurrection, Satan will disown his worshippers and go to hell with his followers. So this means they are hardcore disbelievers, that they reject God despite all the evidences and instead choose Satan as their Lord. Traits of the believers. They avoid gross sins and vice, and when angered, they forgive. They respond to their Lord by observing the contact prayers, Salat. Their affairs are decided after due consultation among themselves. And from our provisions to them they give to charity. When gross injustice befalls them, they stand up for their rights. Although the just requital for an injustice is an equivalent retribution, those who pardon and maintain righteousness are rewarded by God. He doesn't love the unjust. So in these verses, we see the traits that we should have. God says for the believers that when angered, they forgive. So this is something not everyone can do, but it is easy for believers because believers know that nothing is worth losing your anger over. So everything was, is, and will be under God's control. So why would you get angry? For example, if let's say, if your wife yells at you, blame yourself. This is probably happening to you because of something bad you have done. So take her side and examine yourself, and so find your mistake and fix it. So when something bad happens, we need to examine ourselves, and we shouldn't be defensive. And also, God says believers should be in consultation. But in today's system, the majority has superiority over the minority. 50, 51% versus 49% creates many problems. And it seems that the elections in the US will be like this. So, I mean, we can read and see on the internet that people in the US right now seem very divided. So, this is one of the results of going against unanimous agreement, you know. So, it's not in God's system to run the opinion of a 51% majority rammed down the throat of the 49% minority. But this is the case we see in almost all countries, so not just the US. So, by using the Quran as an ultimate reference, we can find solutions to problems. Because, God said their affairs are decided after a due consultation among themselves. So, therefore, when we follow this command, He will definitely help us. And by the way, the name of this surah is consultation. And this word is mentioned in verse 38. So we need to pay extra attention to this issue. And surah names are also not random and they are not man made. They are designed by God, just like the surah and verse numbers and their orders. So, verse 40 was the last one for today. Let's stop here. Thank you all for listening. If you have any comments or questions, please share.
MashaAllah, thank you, brother. Very nice.
MashaAllah, thank you.
MashaAllah. Thank you, brother.
Thank you. I wanted to comment on verse 20, where God says that, whoever is seeking the materials of this world, God will give them, the materials, because many people will, make money and material things their God and will do whatever they can by hook or by crook to, get these materials. And their only focus of this world is to, gain as much material wealth as possible. and they're not making the hereafter their priority, but the believers are the ones, who are making God their priority. And we understand that when you make God your priority, everything else will follow, as we know. So everything that you need as far as your happiness goes in this world will follow, even if it's money. I mean, it's gonna be there for whatever your needs are, what you really need. And your happiness basically is controlled by God. So it doesn't matter how much you have, but how much material wealth you have, but God is the one who controls everything in your life. God controls everything around you, your friends, your relatives, your manager, your boss, whatever, everything and everyone around you. Your all your circumstances are, entirely controlled by God. So when you make God your priority, when you're seeking God, God will make sure that, all your needs are met in every way possible. So that is definitely, when we think about it, that is definitely the intelligent choice that we are being reminded of every day. That, this world is full of distractions and illusions, and sometimes people get caught up in these illusions and lose their focus, lose their focus, the focus being God. I mean, we see so many things around us and so many fancy things around us, so many things that look so glittery and attractive and beautiful. And and these are there to for us to be tested, to see, what is really in our hearts. God says the human beings love material things excessively, and that is true. I mean, we see how excessively the human being loves these materials of this world. People spend their whole life hoarding money and running after these things that don't give them any happiness. But and then at the end, what happens to all that material wealth is just left behind, and your bones are rotting and everything, and you just have regret of wasting your time. I mean, people spend all of their energy on, these worldly things, but we have to, as submitters, understand that what is temporary and what is permanent. And then the intelligent choice is to make God our focus, to seek the rewards of the hereafter, and then everything else that we need will come to us anyways, that we really need. That's not to say that we're not going to work or anything like that, but our focus has to be clear.
Yes, mashallah. We should
MashaAllah.
prioritize God.
SubhanAllah, right, brother? Inshallah.
Yeah, mashallah. And like it was mentioned, verse 15 is really profound when having, um, not necessarily a dispute, but just, or even a debate, or a debate, but just having a conversation with a Jew or Christian and having, because I've used this before and it's not really when I've run out of things to say because I pretty much said or did the best I could. But mashallah, it's really profound, God's wisdom. Because if you just read it and given your situation you're in with this person, it's so true. I mean, for me, it's impactful just on my end. I don't know about their end, but yeah, there's there's profound wisdom in the Quran. Yeah, and as Brother Suleiman was saying, it's very important to bring that up, because there's it's easy, and it's Satan is always after us, right? And so we're obviously in this illusion, and so it's easy for as we see how most people are completely oblivious and averse to God and His message, so we have to be in tip top shape as a submitter to keep our focus on worshiping God alone and doing as much for the soul as possible, because we can see that, as Suleiman mentioned, like most people, what they're really after. I mean, and this is even goes for like, quote unquote, believers from other religions, but you still see this same thing because they don't actually have that belief in the hereafter. So it's like it was said, they just chase the materials of this world, and the hereafter is kind of like a secondary, priority, like, okay, it's just somewhere I'll go after, but like, I'm just going to focus on the here and the now, which is this world for these people. And it's really, there's something they fail to realize is there's something so much better that's waiting and can be attained, and however we know also from the Quran that all these things have been adorned, like Brother Suleiman also mentioned, it's materials. The human being loves materials excessively, and so these and then I think in Surah 18 there's a verse that says we have adorned the materials of this life, something along the lines, and for the people to be tested, so some good reminders for us as submitters, and also reminding our um, fellow brothers and sisters and people we could come across, that could possibly get the message as well, friends or coworkers or something.
Yeah, mashallah. I think like like there's that saying that a bird in hand is worth two in the bush. So it's like if you have two birds in the bush, and then you have one bird in hand, and then you don't want the one bird in hand, but you want the other two birds that are in the bush. So if you want that, you let go of the bird in your hand, and then you're not going to get the two.
Yeah. Hmm.
So I think that's how they look at the hereafter. Like, oh, I can get one bird here. Why should I care about the two birds that are in the bush?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just get what you can now.
Right. Yeah. That's a good example. Yeah, mashallah.
Yeah, also as Brother Abdullah mentioned about the idols, that the people have, created so many extraneous laws and prohibitions to make the religion difficult for people. People who come up with these laws, as it says, they are the idols, right? And so, like, if you have someone who's, creating laws for you, and you're following that person, that person becomes your idol, right? And so as we can see, think people that have also been in submission, also that have created laws and innovations. The people who have followed those people who have done that, have made those individuals their idols, and so we have examples of that, for example, with circumcision and some other things. And people have long denied that these people had any kind of were any kind of leaders or idols that they were following, but based on these verses we understand that if you're following laws that are innovated by people that are not decreed by God, then that is idol worship, first of all. And those people, whether they're rabbis or priests or leaders or whatnot, those people who have created those laws, they become your idols, your scholars, or whomever you have great respect for, you think is really knowledgeable in religion, but is someone who's fabricating lies. And first of all, they're the most evil people on earth, but then also you're idol worshiping them, which nullifies all the works, so anybody following any laws other than the Quran, religious laws that are not part of the Quran, automatically falls into idol worship because of that. Because Quran is not their only source of law. If Quran was their only source of law, then no matter what other people were saying, they wouldn't listen to them, right? So they would not fall into idol worship. But this way, they easily fall into idol worship because someone somewhere has created these laws, and then they become their idol when they follow them.
Yeah, exactly, and right. Just like it's never authorized by God, as it says in the verse. So it's really apparent to us, and I mean, to other possibly other submitters, but for these people, like you said, who are following, um, these rules, laws, prohibitions, or whatever the case could be, right? They
Mm-hmm.
literally become their god, and they're like, oh no, I have to worship this person to. He's not my God or she's not my God because I would have to be worried. Like, no, like
Mm-hmm.
you're choosing, God is telling you something, and then they're telling you something. Well, if you choose what they're telling you over God, that's not your God.
Mm-hmm.
It's really that simple. But um, yeah, I guess it's also a test for these people too, to see if they
Mm-hmm.
really believe and are satisfied with what God tells us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
Um,
mean, if these people really believe in the hereafter, truly believe in the hereafter, then these fancy words and things will not attract them. This is just like
that's
a
right.
litmus test for these people, that to see if they really believe in the hereafter or not. It's
Mhm.
just exposed.
Yeah, they would even have like more reverence or something, or like be very careful to double check what they're following from this person. These religious laws, and then not just
Hmm.
kind of blindly follow them. Like, oh no, it's all good. They would
Hmm.
actually think twice or think three times, and then make the right decision. Yeah, and like verse 18 says, the believer is mindful of the day of judgment, and this is really helpful as submitters. Because even before we get in our vehicle or we're doing something, or even the way we're having a conversation with somebody, let's say about submission, or let's say just something about something else, so we could be about work, and we're being careful with everything we're saying, because all that is being recorded, and we're gonna see it, for ourselves, play back on like the videotape example that's given to us. So, because yeah, like Brother Abdullah mentioned, and there's other people that say they believe in it, but if you look at their actions and stuff, or like this person I met recently, she said it's really hard. She finds it very hard to be a good Christian. And I was like, well, what does that mean? I said, what do you mean by that? And long story short, after kind of a lengthy, somewhat productive, good discussion, there's still, and this is the case with a lot of people. They're still doing like obvious sins and stuff, or falling victim or prey to committing obvious transgressions and stuff, and then they know some deep down inside they know something's wrong with it, because if they really believed or actually believed in the get out of hell free card that Jesus is going to die for them, they would not even be worried about being a good Christian, so. But I mean, you can see the distinguishment, the distinguishing factor with this, you know.
Yeah, also, what do you guys think about verses 32 and 33? I always find it interesting that God talks about the ships as a proof.
Yeah, to me, I think I saw this video that went viral on YouTube about a year ago, and it was this guy who sailed across the entire Pacific Ocean, I think, in just a small sailboat, like this young guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually thought
Mm-hmm.
about like this verse really hit home for me because
Mm-hmm.
before, I don't think I've ever been on a ship. No, I haven't. But in part of his journey, halfway through, he's starting to get worried and get nervous. Like there's a video, it's a really good one. A young kid,
You've
and
never been on a ship?
I don't think so. No, I think I've just been on a boat,
Okay.
but not like a ship. But I mean, I guess they're the same thing. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, he completely got stranded, or like he wasn't moving for like an entire day and a half because of the wind. Like the water was completely still, and I mean, he was
Mm-hmm.
getting nervous. He was doing like a video log. Obviously, all this was uploaded after. But after
Mm-hmm.
seeing that, that's when I realized it was like, oh my gosh, subhanAllah, like, because you could see the excitement and stuff that came in his eyes, and like when he started filming,
Mm-hmm.
when they had a wind drift picked up again, and
Mm-hmm.
it was really scary too, like even watching it
Mm-hmm.
for him. But I guess after seeing that, that's my, I guess I could come to appreciate this verse more and like better understand
Mm-hmm.
it. You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, another thing we can think about is like, when you're traveling these long distances in the water, like for example, fuel would be very difficult for these long distances to, be able to be sufficient for people to make those long journeys, right? Especially with those sailboats. But God has provided a mechanism with these winds that allow them to sail like with least amount of friction using water, allowing them to stay afloat, not drown in the sea also, and also carry them, just using clean wind as a source of energy. So and as it says, had God willed, he could have stilled the winds, leaving them motionless on top of the water. So God has created these winds, these currents that allows for ships to sail through these different areas, even ships that have other forms of energy, will, I believe, they still take advantage of this, because it
Yeah.
helps
Uh,
go faster, I believe.
Yeah. Even his was kind of set up like that. Like he had a fuel thing for a backup, but he didn't have much of it. A small tank, but he mainly used the wind.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
Oh.
subhanallah.
Mashallah, brother. Also the provisions, like people getting things from these ships, and
Mm-hmm.
at this time too, like when the Quran was being revealed, probably um it was going on more than now.
Mm-hmm.
Like people getting food and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, still now there's all of the goods that are transported among different, through different continents. A lot of it is done through ships. A
Right.
lot of the heavy stuff that comes, a lot of the food supplies and things like that. A lot of it is done through the sea for the most part, right?
All right, brother.
All the oil and all this stuff, is also even, you have oil tankers and all these things are also using ships. They say that over 80% of all the goods that are transported internationally, they happen by sea. 80% over 80%, right? So most of the goods that are transported in from one country to another 80% of it is done by the sea. So that's a big number even now.
Okay, mashallah. Subhanallah, and imagine that, God could, you know, just stop the ships, from moving and all the materials and all their goods, we just sink.
Exactly. Yes. Also, there was some comments about consultation and how the surahs have consultation. So it is very important for the believers. I mean, this is mentioned as part of the traits of the believers. So it is important. One, it says, when angered, they forgive, right? They avoid gross sins and vice, like obvious sins, the believers will avoid. So this is a sign that they are believers. But also, another sign is that they do their contact prayers, and their affairs are decided after due consultation among themselves. So this is important, and I think the Messenger of the Covenant has given some very good examples. It's like he was talking about, I believe, something about the coffee machine in the mosque or something like that. Or he said, they would even consult about that. They should, because it impacts everyone. So you should hear everybody's concerns and or everybody's perspectives. This will help you, to make an informed decision. Listen to everybody. And definitely, I mean, anybody would recommend that, that if you are making decisions in your life, or about whether it's a company or organization or a house, when you consult, you're gonna come to better decisions. You will hear inputs from different people, different perspectives, and you'll make a better decision based on that. Because if it just goes by one person, you might overlook certain things, or you might pay less attention, or more attention to certain things and not look at some other areas. So based on that, this is God's way for us. So we have to remember that. And we see oftentimes when people don't consult, they end up making poor choices. And some people may think that uh, doing consultation will somehow um, put them in a position that they don't want to be looked into, like they want to make their own decisions, right? And they don't want to be seen as dependent on anybody. But yeah, you can always make your own decisions, but just here, it doesn't mean that if you seek consultation that you have to follow. If it's, let's say, if it's something about your own life, right? But in that situation, you can hear people's perspectives and still make the right decision on what you think is right at the end of the day. But especially when it comes to community affairs, that are affecting everybody, which in here in this case is mostly referring to affairs, their affairs, mostly referring to like affairs that affect all of them. They will make decisions after due consultation among themselves. And unanimous consensus, I believe, also is coming from this verse. When it talks about the great nations. I mean, how their political system, has to be based on unanimous consensus. So you consult everybody, and then you come to a decision that is acceptable to everyone. So no one person or fewer number of people are victimized. You heard everybody, and then people come to a compromise in case there's a disagreement. Where everybody's happy at the end of the day. So, but that is really important. So just I mean, consultation in general, whether it's a community affair or your own personal life, a lot of times you will benefit from hearing opinion from other people on how they would execute a certain thing. So you can make informed decisions that way.
MashaAllah, brother.
Hmm. Sure. Yeah, I think also on verse 39, it is very, significant. The verse that God talks about here, when gross injustice befalls them, they stand up for their rights. I mean, God wants us to be like that. God wants us to stand up for our rights, because if someone wrongs your rights and you don't say anything, like, oh, God is doing everything, which is true, God is doing everything, but maybe God is doing it this way to see if you're going to stand up for your rights or not. And God says the believers, they will stand up for their rights, of course, because the believers do not like injustice. So when injustice is happening, you're not just going to take it. I mean, obviously, you shouldn't get upset, you shouldn't get angry. But, if someone's trying to take your rights away, trying to wrong you in some way, you can stand up for your rights. You can defend yourself in that position, to make sure that there's justice, that they don't go on like wronging people in that way, and you are not wronged, and then obviously you're just following God's commandment. You don't have anything to worry about, because God is your Lord and Master, and He will protect you regardless of the outcome. But I think, and we shouldn't overthink this, with the consequences of you standing up for your rights. You should just think about the fact that God says, okay, you should stand up for your rights, and you should stand up. Um, so I think that is definitely important for people to remember. Sometimes people don't think about this, and they think that, if someone wrongs them in this manner, like gross injustice, that they just have to be quiet and be patient and just take it and let God deal with it. So God will deal with it, but you have to do your part.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean that. Yeah, it's very true. And not getting angry or upset because like we can stand up for our rights without losing our temper. And I mean, I've made the mistake before. Um, doing that, but like not like getting upset or getting angry, you know, like, but like when there was another way to stand up for my right, I probably could have handled it better. But yeah, like I was, because I thought about this verse, and when you see gross injustice, I mean, like if somebody walks up to me and hits me, I mean, that could technically knock you out and you could hit your head on the sidewalk and get killed. So, I mean, how do y'all look at that verse as far as like, uh, because we also have, I'm sorry, excuse me. We also have like the example, like from the messenger, if somebody hits you, it's best to remain patient and stuff, but in other place he says don't turn the other cheek, because that's like a satanic saying from Christianity. And it actually, I think the origins of it is actually comes from the Romans, and it's I'll get into that later. But it's not a good,
Yeah.
supposedly the origins. But how would y'all look at that? Because I mean, gross injustice, if somebody walks up to you and attacks you, or I mean, even swings at you or hits you, you could, I mean, this has been cases like people have, like a kid at a high school party died just from getting hit, not even that hard that I know of, and he hit his head on because he fell down and hit his head. So I mean, if he's attacking you or your friend or something, I think, I mean, how do y'all look at that? Because I mean, I'm open to just hearing
Yeah, yeah.
other people's opinions.
So when it talks about gross injustice, I don't see it as someone walking up to you and punching you in the face and stuff. Like well, first of all, you have injustice, right? And then you have gross injustice, right? So gross injustice is talking about, like, to me, like it's talking about serious situations, like, let's say, I mean, like say,
Like
someone try,
severe, like very
yeah,
severe.
like someone, yeah, like say, like someone tries to, like you inherited a house and someone's trying to, occupy it, or someone trying to evict you from your house
Uh-huh.
illegally,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
take over, like someone tries to let's say the bank trying to repossess your car, even though you have been
Mhm.
making payments and
Yeah,
never
yeah,
falling.
that's I completely, yeah, that's like a criminal. That's criminal
Yeah,
activity that you're doing.
or let's say, some company has wronged you in some way, and you ended up suffering a lot financially because of it, right? And you have the right to stand up for your rights and make a claim against them. I
Yeah,
mean,
completely.
things like that, right? Whether it's
Hmm.
to a company or a person or group of people. So, like, injustice happens to you. Let's say you have a child, and the child protective services or whatever, unjustly, trying to take away the child from you, even though you have been taking care of the child very well. But let's say someone complained and said this person's not doing his job as a father, and he's doing weird things or whatever, and they're trying to take away, So that would be a gross injustice. Like for God, for example, God says, "Do not use bad language unless gross injustice befalls you." Right. So doesn't mean if someone
Hmm.
comes and someone puts
Right.
you,
Right.
you start bad
Right.
words.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's better to follow the example. Yeah, yeah, that makes complete sense.
Right.
Yeah, because I mean that like happened to me, but I did better this time versus like 6 months ago with kind of they, I think I might have told you, but you spend a lot of money on a piece of hardware, a very expensive
Mm-hmm.
laptop and other stuff, and it came in damaged and they
Mm-hmm.
charged full
Yeah.
price. It was really
Mhm.
deception and like
Yeah.
them trying to get one over on you. And mashallah, it
Mhm.
worked out, but I did like leave this company a review. I made sure to let other people know, like, look, I wouldn't do business with this company. They're not good. And
Mhm.
Amazon,
Mhm.
took charge, and I did, I
Mhm.
didn't just like, oh no, I'm the take. Yeah, okay, I get it. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I would have. That's like thievery almost on their part, like
Yeah.
But yeah, mashallah, that makes sense. Yeah, and I wasn't saying earlier like I would, go on like hit that person back if you hit me or my friend, but I was just, because I don't have that thinking anymore. I was just wondering the past thinking I had and lack of understanding. I was just wanting to make sure it didn't fall into like that category or something. Or mashallah. Yeah, because if I got hit, like, I probably deserved it.
I will test you, John.
Yeah. Well, no, it's like if somebody hit you, it's like I would.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Well, no, if somebody hit you, if like we're at the gym or wherever, I'm like, I don't think I'd be okay with that. But I mean,
like I'm not with him.
yeah, like I can't say.
No, actually, it happened to me as a kid. Like I was with a friend, and like he was like my friend for a long time. He was just a neighbor. We kind of grew up together, and we went to a place. We got in trouble, and there's like 20 people. Ran towards us, and they start hitting me. And then they start punching me and everything. And then this guy, the first thing came out of his mouth, he's like, "Oh, no, don't come at me." He's like, "I'm not with him."
Oh man. Oh man. Yeah, he let you down.
Yeah.
I bet you he probably got hit anyway.
Yeah, but they let him go because of that.
Yeah. Man. That's funny. Yeah. Yeah, because another thing too, like it's kind of like I think, take it with a grain of salt. How it was said by the founding, they call them the founding fathers of America, but they said when a good man does nothing, and they're talking about gross injustice, like so if tyranny's happening and their government's like, that's really what happened. They left England, and then the tyranny and also the British colonies that were being very abusive and tyrannical here. But they said, when a good man does nothing, like when gross injustice occurs, then evil flourishes. You know, so they had that saying, and like we have to, do our part. Just so like people or
Yeah,
companies
definitely.
don't think they can just get away with it because they'll keep pushing or poking the bear, and if the bear doesn't wake up or respond to them, then eventually they'll just keep doing it, and it'll get worse and worse.
Exactly. I mean, God teaches us to be like that, because God says the believers, they advocate righteousness and prohibit things that are not righteous. And we see that in societies where people forget to do that, that there's so much chaos and corruption. And this is something that I appreciate, especially I guess with some other countries. When I look at some other countries and some other nations, and how people respond to different situations, for example, in the US, just as an example, like, if anyone sees a parent hitting a child, violently in public, people will call the cops right away, or a spouse or something. People will call the cops right away, and even people will themselves will step in, to try to stop it from happening. But in many other countries, that's not the case. People will see it, and people will just look and just turn their heads
Wow.
as if they didn't see anything. and and not even just that, like worse, things that are worse than that, people will see and they will turn away, and then they'll pretend that they didn't see anything because they just don't want to be bothered by it or get in trouble. But at the same time, like they would make it their business to fuss over little things, like things that in other societies, like in the US, for example, like things that you wouldn't let people have their own freedom, but they would
Mhm.
like their business to come and question you about those things
Yeah, like they
and make
spend
sure.
their time on the trivial, nonsensical
Yeah,
things when the
yeah, that are none of their business. Things
mhm.
that should be none of their business, like they will come and try to give you a hard time. Like say, like when I was in Saudi Arabia, like people coming to me and say this is haram and this is haram and stuff like that. But like if
Yeah,
you see people there like being bad to children, stuff like that, nobody will care.
yeah, it just shows like more. It's kind of like a reflection of even how they have their priorities, like even in worldly
Hmm.
stuff, completely mixed up.
Exactly.
Yeah, mashallah, it's very nice too to have like other perspectives and experiences like you've talked about because I guess just sometimes you can take things for granted, just living
Hmm.
living in America or something, or not having or
Hmm.
going anywhere, going to any other country, you know.
Hmm. Right. So, there any other comments or questions from anybody? Any off-topic questions from anyone? All right. So I guess if there, Josh, have a comment. Oh.
Well, I kind of had I guess, a question, off topic, real quick. So, like,
Mm-hmm.
I was just wondering. So, the way, I guess it sparked up after, like one of our local judges, like where the city I'm from, he died. He passed away of a heart attack. I think he was 66, and I was just wondering, like, so the circumstances of one's death doesn't really like so a submitter, let's say, dies of old age in their sleep, or could die like does the circumstances matter of like how somebody passes away? Because I'm not saying he was a submitter, but I mean he was like a good uh fair person. Like I think my
Mm-hmm.
parents knew him and coached um his son like with soccer and stuff. And I was just wondering, like, I think he had a heart attack in his office, and then he went to the hospital. Then, like the next day, he spent the rest of his day at home, and then he passed away. So
Mm-hmm.
he
So
was just
yeah,
wondering.
yeah, Masha, that's a good question. So like based on the way the Master of the Covenant talks about it, like he said, the way someone dies in itself doesn't death, like the means of death is irrelevant, but what's relevant is your the quality of your life. Like while you were alive,
Oh,
did you
okay.
experience
He said,
pain? Did
okay.
you experience misery? you
Hmm.
know like did you experience excruciating pain? Were these like the worst years of your life? How that happened. So
Hmm.
but naturally, you talk about things like AIDS and cancer, dying from these diseases. I mean, it doesn't matter how you died, but what matters is how you lived during this time, like how your health started. So obviously, if you're in pain and misery and all this stuff, I mean, that shows that you're in a lot of pain, right? But let's say who just dies in their sleep, but the last 5, 6 years, 7 years, 10 years were still bad. They were depressed and miserable and all that. Then it doesn't matter how they passed away in that
Oh
sense,
wow,
right?
yeah. So they could even die in their sleep and have a seemingly quote
Yeah.
unquote peaceful death, but they had
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I totally
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the quality of life, because I
Yeah.
remember now that you said it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, because I was wondering, it was like I was yeah, I was just thinking like, oh, what if like he died of a heart attack or something, or yeah, because I mean we see right in the Quran that like messengers, prophets, or I think maybe saints and even believers too have been martyred, like killed in war and stuff, or just or however else, um,
Yeah, but we do understand that for believers, they will not have like those types of illnesses and stuff where they have like cancer and things like that, because there's no diseases in God's kingdom. So they will not suffer any misery and pain and trouble. If they are on God's side in God's kingdom, that they'll have a healthy, fulfilling life. Long, healthy, fulfilling life. God willing, all of us have that. And if anybody gets cancer or AIDS or some other disease, terrible disease, where they have to suffer from a lot of pain and misery, then that is not a good sign for them.
right.
MashaAllah.
Yeah. I mean, one could have admissions tests and stuff, like have disease and stuff like Job. But then God makes up to them, and then they recover after they pass their tests. Everything's fine. But if something like that happens and you end up dying, then that shows like your health started, and you just kept suffering, and your life got worse and worse. You didn't see any happiness in your life. So I mean, this is what we understand.
Yeah, that makes sense. MashaAllah.
Okay, so I guess if there are no other comments or questions, God willing, we can conclude our studies. So thank you, Brother Abdullah, for leading the study, and thank you everyone else, all of us, for participating and joining in the study with us. God willing, our next English Quran study would be on Tuesday at 2 p.m. Pacific time. God bless you all. Assalamu alaikum.
Selamünaleyküm.
God bless you.